By early 2026, the Middle East was dominated by two escalating flashpoints. Inland, Iran was rapidly rebuilding a destroyed nuclear reactor at Darkhovin. On the coast, the regime threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz, potentially cutting off 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. Protecting these sites was a multi-layered defensive network, known as the Wall of Steel. It relied on over-the-horizon radars to track threats hundreds of miles away, while mobile jamming units saturated the province with enough GPS interference to render satellite-guided weapons useless. Beneath that electronic screen sat the physical teeth of the defense, long-range surface-to-air missile batteries, positioned to intercept anything surviving the initial radar detection. Against a network this dense, a standard aerial strike was essentially a suicide mission. Penetrating the shield meant moving beyond brute force and finding a way to exploit the specific physical limitations of the radar and the Earth itself. The operation began under total electronic silence. At 5:05 a.m., an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer threaded through a crowded anchorage of commercial tankers, positioning itself within 55 miles of the Iranian coast without emitting a single radar pulse. From her vertical launch cells, a volley of Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles erupted into the night. Immediately after launch, they dropped to an altitude of just 160 feet, skimming the Khuzestan floodplains to stay beneath the enemy's field of vision. This shows why that altitude was critical. The S-300 batteries utilize an 80-foot mast to elevate their radar. But because the Earth is curved, the radar's line of sight is physically limited, rendering low-flying missiles invisible until they are dangerously close. By the time the radar finally locked on, it was too late. The battery launched its interceptors in a desperate attempt to compensate, but the geometry was skewed. The missiles detonated hundreds of feet above the low-skimming Tomahawks. By using altitude as a form of stealth, the strike package successfully weaponized the curvature of the Earth to move through the first layer of the Wall of Steel. As the missiles moved further inland, the Iranian sector commander activated his secondary defense, province-wide GPS jamming. This created a massive net of electronic noise designed to strip the Tomahawks of their satellite navigation. But the missiles were prepared. This internal view shows TERCOM, terrain contour matching. Instead of satellites, a belly-mounted radar altimeter scanned the elevations of canals, matching physical shapes against three-dimensional digital maps to stay on course. This navigation method is entirely passive and requires zero external signal. The massive GPS jamming operation meant to stop the missiles was effectively targeting a system the Tomahawks were no longer using. At the Darkhovin site, 7 missiles arrived from different directions within a single 5-second window. This simultaneous strike, or time-on-target barrage, pulverized the reactor foundations before the defenders could reset their jamming frequencies. By shifting their reference point from the sky to the soil, the strike team turned the electronic trap into a strategic irrelevance. When the regime retaliated by mining the Strait of Hormuz, the focus shifted to Operation Project Freedom. The objective was the underground naval missile magazine on Greater Tunb Island, which housed the anti-ship missiles holding the global economy at gunpoint. These missiles were stored inside a mountain, protected by 5 separate layers of steel-reinforced concrete, each 6 feet thick. The site was built to withstand a massive surface bombardment. To dismantle it, F-15E Strike Eagles deployed the GBU-72 Advanced 5-kiloton penetrator. Weighing 4,400 pounds, this weapon was engineered with a hardened casing designed to survive high-speed impacts with reinforced slabs. The innovation of the GBU-72 lies in its smart fuse. Plunging at 1,100 feet per second, it physically counts the concrete layers, only triggering the main charge once it detects the empty air of the final missile storage room. The detonation occurred inside the vault, driving the shockwave through the internal tunnels. The mountain's own concrete roof contained the blast, forcing a chain reaction that destroyed the stored missiles and collapsed the entire fortress from within. With its nuclear infrastructure dismantled and its coastal missile batteries buried, the regime's ability to project power or threaten global shipping was effectively neutralized. This loss of strategic leverage led to a diplomatic resolution on June 17, 2026. At the Palace of Versailles, President Donald Trump signed the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, ending the immediate hostilities. Global energy markets stabilized almost immediately. Oil prices, which had spiked during the blockade, dropped back to $70 a barrel as tankers began to move freely through the strait once more. However, the financial scale of this campaign was immense. Direct U.S. operating costs for the operation totaled $113.3 billion, a reflection of the massive logistics required to maintain such a high level of technical precision. Operation Epic Fury proved that even the most reinforced stationary defenses can be dismantled by exploiting the physical laws of geometry and engineering. But as the mission's $100 billion price tag suggests, the cost of overcoming those obstacles is just as significant as the technology used to break them. In early 2026, the Iranian rial entered a terminal freefall. This economic collapse triggered mass protests that paralyzed commercial centers, starting with the shopkeepers in Tehran's Grand Bazaar. The regime responded by cutting internet access nationwide, enforcing a near-total communications blackout, while security forces moved into the streets to suppress the uprising. The domestic tension reached a breaking point when an Iranian-backed proxy group launched a drone and missile strike on a U.S. military base in Jordan. The explosion killed 2 American service members and left a third missing. With the diplomatic window closed, President Trump authorized Operation Epic Fury from the cabin of Air Force One. The order set in motion a rapid military buildup across the Persian Gulf. The mission required striking a leadership structure protected by 30 meters of earth and reinforced concrete. At that depth, any strike that failed to eliminate the target would likely trigger an immediate, large-scale regional war. To prevent the targets from scattering, coalition commanders had to ensure the leadership felt secure enough to remain in a single location. This required a sequence of maneuvers designed to convince Iranian intelligence that no attack was imminent. The operation began with a series of coordinated false data streams fed directly into Iranian intelligence networks and monitored satellite feeds. Leaked reports placed an entire squadron of American F-22 stealth fighters at Ovda Air Base in Israel. This created a specific threat for Iranian analysts to track while the actual strike packages prepared elsewhere. In Tel Aviv, Israeli commanders drove their official vehicles away from headquarters and to their homes. To overhead spy satellites, the Central Military Command appeared to be following a standard inactive routine. The perceived lack of activity lured Iran's top military and political leadership to gather for a meeting inside the Khatam al-Anbiya underground bunker. As soon as the leadership was confirmed on site, 200 Allied warplanes moved into Iranian airspace. Over the next 24 hours, they would drop more than 1,000 precision-guided munitions. Heavy bunker-buster bombs, designed to penetrate layers of earth and reinforced concrete, hammered the coordinates. The munitions successfully reached the subterranean facility, killing the supreme leader and 30 senior commanders. The death of the central leadership did not end the military response. Instead, it activated Iran's Mosaic Defense Doctrine, which handed immediate retaliatory authority to surviving regional commanders stationed across the country. Those commanders launched an immediate counterstrike. At 5:47 a.m., 8 Qiyam ballistic missiles rose from mobile launchers, targeting the 4,000 American troops stationed at Al-Salem airbase in Kuwait. As the missiles accelerated to Mach 5, American air defense crews launched Patriot PAC-3 MSE interceptors to meet them in the upper atmosphere. This diagram shows the geometry of the engagement. The Patriot uses an active radar seeker to lock onto the incoming warhead. It does not use an explosive charge. Instead, it relies on a hit-to-kill collision, using pure kinetic energy to obliterate the target mid-air. This defense has a physical limitation. The system's AN/MPQ-65 radar array is directional. To track the high-speed ballistic threat from the north, the radar was locked into a narrow forward cone, leaving the flanks of the airbase completely unmonitored. Iranian commanders exploited this gap by launching a swarm of Shahed 136 drones from the southeast. These low-cost munitions were programmed to hug the terrain, staying just above the waterline to avoid detection. Traveling at only 115 miles per hour, the drones were slow enough to slip under the radar's search parameters. They bypassed the primary defense grid and were not detected until they were seconds from impact. This single engagement saw two different eras of military technology collide. On one side, multi-million-dollar interceptors were hunting hypersonic warheads. On the other, $50,000 drones were using low-speed maneuvers to end-run the entire system. This is the logic of a saturation attack. Every defense system has a computational limit on how many targets it can track and engage at one time. As this interface shows, the drones had a specific function. Flooding the radar with slow-moving contacts filled the Patriots' tracking channels just as the ballistic missiles arrived. Overloaded for 60 seconds, the system allowed the 8th Qiyam missile to slip through undetected. The warhead struck a maintenance hangar on the flight line. The impact ignited stored fuel, sending a massive shockwave across the base, causing significant, crippling damage to the infrastructure. The successful decapitation strike in Tehran had secured the opening move, but the explosion in Kuwait proved that even a sophisticated air defense grid can be bypassed using high-volume, low-tech tactics. The Iranian military intended for this retaliatory strike to force a pause in the conflict, creating a moment for negotiation. Instead, it accelerated the American naval response. While damage assessments were underway in Kuwait, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer moved into the Persian Gulf. The ship operated in total electronic silence, navigating through the commercial shipping lanes to avoid detection. The mission was moving into a new phase. From the silent waters of the Gulf, the U.S. Navy prepared to launch a swarm of Tomahawk cruise missiles toward the Iranian coast.